When you think about it, street photography is pretty weird. I mean, you're like a paparazzi, but for regular people. You're walking around taking photos of strangers doing very mundane things. And while most people don't really seem to mind, they just ignore you, some people do mind. And naturally, this can be quite intimidating for beginners. Especially if you're a little bit introverted or have a degree of social anxiety, like I used to be, for example. So in this video, I'm just going to share a couple of my tips or methods to avoid those awkward situations where you have to explain yourself or where you have to basically run for your life. Seriously though, I've been shooting streets for maybe 3 or 4 years, usually several times a week, up until COVID, and I only got yelled at once. So first, I think the most important thing is to think of this as a skill, just like anything else. So the more you do it, the less scary it gets and more natural you get at it. And also if you stop doing it, you quickly lose the skill. I noticed this because due to COVID, I didn't really do photography, especially street photography, for like 5 months. And once I went back out there, it was really awkward. I could basically not bring myself to take almost any shots of people for the first day or so until I got used to it again. But anyway, let's get to the tips. Tip number 1. If you are a beginner, you might want to start in a very touristy area of the city you're in, or even travel to a very touristy area of your country if you are from a very small town. This is because the more people there are around you who are also taking photos, the less weird it seems that you're taking photos as well, and people just kind of assume you're a tourist. And tourists tend to get a free pass. So if you're just getting into this and you want to practice, you want to play it safe, then be a tourist and you'll have a lot easier time with people just ignoring you basically. Because in fact, the only time that I ever actually got yelled at for taking street photos, I was in my hometown. I'm from a very small town. Nobody takes photos there of anything. Doing street photography there is seen as something that is completely weird and unusual, and people basically assumed that I was taking photos for some other malicious purpose, and they reacted badly. But for example, if you're in New York, if you're in Tokyo, nobody cares. It's extremely common to be a street photographer there. So if you have an access to an area like this, take advantage of it. Tip number 2, anticipate your shots in advance and let people walk into your frame. Because when you have a lens pointed at a location already and somebody walks into it, you basically have what I would call plausible deniability. They walked into your frame, therefore it's pretty rare that they would yell at you because they are the one who made the action. Not only does this method make it less awkward when you're taking photos, it also kind of forces you to be a better photographer, because you'll have to really think about the spot you're picking, and then usually you'll tend to stay there for long enough that you get a good shot, and that is often what the better photographers do anyways. They pick a spot and stand there for like an hour or 2 until they're satisfied with the optimal image. And to be honest, I need to take this advice as well. Before COVID, I started getting kind of impatient, but I later realized that I was kind of missing shots because I was not waiting long enough. So in any case, it's usually a really good practice in general. If you want to play it extra safe, you can basically pretend that you're taking photos of something else, so that when you take a photo and somebody walks into your frame, don't immediately drop your camera and make it more obvious that you took a photo of them specifically. You can just basically freeze like this or like this and just look really focused and keep taking the photos as people walk by, so nobody gets the sense that you were like specifically stalking them personally. Because again, it's usually those situations where people take it personally, they think that you were taking a photo of them specifically, is when you get a bad reaction from people. But when you're more like a tourist again, or you're interested in something else, like I'm interested in my kitchen kettle right now, then people give you more of a free pass. Tip number 3, pretend that you are shooting a video instead. This is something that I kind of discovered by accident, because I've been doing these videos of kind of just like walking around, capturing like ambience of a city, walking around for several minutes at a time, usually with a gimbal, taking videos. And what I noticed is that when people see that you're taking videos, they kind of ignore you for some reason. I mean, some people go and wave at the camera and ruin the whole thing, but it's either they ignore you or they do that. Nobody thinks when you're taking a video on the street that you're specifically shooting them, unless you're like following the person or something. So then what I started doing sometimes is I would just, walk like this, pretending I'm doing a video, but I was being still and just press the shutter whenever there was a good opportunity to take a photo. Now, obviously, it is not the most ideal method for taking photos because you only get one chance when you walk past somebody. You can't really go back, or then it defeats the whole purpose. And if it's nighttime, you kind of have to compromise your settings because you have to use a fast shutter speed because you're moving when taking photos, at least usually. And focus can sometimes be a bit of a problem if you don't have a good autofocus system, or you're not really fast enough with the manual focus. It can be inconsistent. So I wouldn't recommend this to be like a permanent thing you always do, but on those days that you don't feel like risking it, or you want to get used to the whole process, that is one method you can use that seems to work quite well. I think people just assume you're doing like a travel video or commercial work or something else when you're doing a video. Again, they don't take it personally, and that is the whole key of avoiding those bad interactions. What the hell is tip number 4? Tip number 4 is you cannot always avoid taking a photo of someone directly. And when that situation presents itself and the shot is just too good to miss, you have to smile and be friendly. Now, admittedly, it is hard to do this sometimes when you're not feeling very social, but being friendly, maybe giving the person a compliment if they have a feature that made you take a photo, like a nice hat or something, and just smiling, maybe showing them the photo after, is just a really good method to live life. Basically, I mean, it's really hard to get mad at somebody who is friendly. That's just how human psychology works. I mean, the ultimate goal is to basically get to a point where you don't care about any of these awkward situations, assuming that you're respectable and not doing anything like unethical. You should be aiming to get to this point where you can actually interact with people on the street, even if they're strangers, and even if it's a little bit scary. And it's certainly the most mature or best way to do it eventually. I think the next tip is that when you're taking photos in the rain or in the very bad weather, people are usually pretty distracted with not getting wet, that you can avoid a lot of attention. And in addition, you can basically hide the field of view with an umbrella, shoot from under the umbrella like this, and people don't really see what you're doing as easily. They don't see you make eye contact to them, and it's just a lot easier to get away with stuff when it's raining. And obviously it makes your photos very often look way better in general. So yeah, when it's raining, don't stay in, just go out. It's worth it, even if you get wet. And I think the last tip is going to be the most obvious tip, kind of the disclaimer that I have to give you. Don't be an idiot, use your brain. Don't take photos of people who look really angry and or are carrying a weapon. Don't take photos of children at the park with a telephoto lens, or in any case, really. Don't take photos of homeless people. And generally just, if you're in a very dangerous part of town at very late at night, don't risk it. As a general rule for myself, I only risk taking a riskier shot if the shot is really worth it. You really don't want to risk a negative interaction for a mediocre shot. Basically, learn how to pick your chances and be really smart about it so that you don't get into bad situations. And if all else fails, and if you do get into bad situations, just know which way to run and wear running shoes, and don't pack like 7 lenses at a time so you can be agile. I think that covers most of it. Again, it is a skill to take photos of strangers. It may seem very weird for the first couple days that you do it, but eventually you just get used to it. And I think as well, the more confident you get with your own abilities, the easier it gets to kind of justify what you're doing. Oftentimes people will ask you like, what are you doing? But you can be like, I'm doing photography. What are you doing? And they'll leave you alone if you don't say it like I just did there, and you actually, you know, like say it like a normal person. One time somebody asked me why I was taking photos of their car, and I simply showed them the photo, and they were like, I see, nice photo, carry on. So often people are just confused about what you're doing. It's better not to automatically assume that they have bad intentions or want to beat you up for taking a photo. Just explain yourself and what you're doing, and you should be fine. I think that covers most of what I do. I hope these tips were helpful. And do leave me a comment. I would like to hear what you thought about this, and I would also like to hear what you would like to see next as far as the video content on this channel goes. Thank you very much for watching once again, and see you next time.